She can't take her. Please? She stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around our newborn, shaking. Across the lawn, the woman with the clipboard didn't blink. Just pointed at the flowers, said they were a violation, said the baby posed a safety concern, and then she asked for her, not an apology, not a warning. She wanted us to hand over our child because of what we planted. I wasn't a soldier then. I wasn't anything, just a father trying not to collapse. If I had opened the door a second later, I might have lost everything, and the terrifying part. That moment was the first move, not the last. Oak Ridge was supposed to be quiet, safe. We picked it for the trees, the park nearby, and the way the light fell across our new porch in the mornings. Emily had just come home from the hospital. Her C-section scar hadn't even fully closed. She held our daughter like the world might break her. Every breath she took felt like it came with a warning. I tried to stay calm for her, for the baby, for the promise of a fresh start. We planted lavender, that's all. I didn't think a few flowers could start a war. I didn't know a name like Marlene Whitmore could hold that much weight, not until her shadow fell across our front door and stayed there. The first violation was the mailbox. Too glossy, not HOA-approved paint. Then came the notice about our blinds. Wrong shade of beige. I laughed. Emily didn't. Our neighbor, an older woman watering her plants, whispered, "Don't cross her. Marlene runs this place like a little kingdom." I looked at her porch. No flowers, no color, no signs of life. Marlene showed up the next morning. Clipboard, rules, smile like a razor. "You'll want to review the guidelines," she said. She didn't look at the baby, not once. Then she paused, turned back. "Those lavender bushes need to be gone by Friday, or there'll be consequences." Consequences. Over flowers. I didn't know it yet. But this wasn't about rules, it was about control. By day 4, we had 5 violations. Emily stopped opening the curtains. Every time she heard the mailbox rattle, she flinched. I told her I'd handle it, that it wasn't worth getting worked up over. She nodded, but she started waking up at night, just to check the front door. Twice she swore she heard someone on the porch. I checked the footage, nothing there, but the fear. That was real. I knocked on Fred's door. He was in his 70s, lived alone, kept to himself. He didn't ask questions, just said, "You need to keep your head down. Marlene doesn't like noise or change." "What happens if we don't?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just shut the door. Fred left something on our porch the next morning. An old folded HOA booklet. Handwritten notes filled the margins. Dates, names, violations. He had highlighted a line, "Repeat infractions may result in legal review." I knocked on his door again. He opened slowly. "I lost my son to this place," he said. "Not to drugs, not to crime, to them." He looked past me toward the street. They fined him into the ground. Said his porch furniture wasn't community compliant. He lost his house. Lost himself after that. Fred's eyes were dry, but his voice was full of everything else. "I thought maybe if you're the kind they don't scare, maybe this time someone fights back." He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. Emily looked smaller every day. Not in body, but in presence. In voice. She stopped talking during breakfast. Stopped walking barefoot in the grass like she used to. Stopped humming when she rocked our baby. One night I found her crying in the laundry room, clutching a violation notice. It was about a wind chime. Too loud. "I'm doing everything right," she whispered. "And it's still not enough. I wanted to fix it. But this wasn't a leaking pipe. This was a system, built to squeeze." I held her. I told her we were okay. But in the pit of my gut, I knew that wasn't true. Something worse was coming, and it was already on our front lawn. I checked the HOA camera placements again. One was aimed straight at our bedroom window. Another pointed at the baby's room. I walked the sidewalk, counted 3 more on surrounding poles, all labeled for community safety. Emily asked me if we were being watched. I told her I didn't know anymore. That night, the baby woke up screaming. We ran into the room. The curtain was slightly open. "I closed it," Emily whispered. Her voice was shaking. There was no broken glass, no signs of forced entry. But her fear, that was real. We weren't being monitored. We were being studied. And someone had already stepped inside our lives. Fred left his porch light on that night. He never did that before. When I asked why he didn't look at me, just lit a cigarette with a shaky hand. My son had a fiancée. A life. He just wanted to build a garden. He took a long drag. They fined him. threatened foreclosure, told him if he couldn't afford to repaint the trim, he didn't belong here. Fred held out a photo, a young man in a military uniform smiling with dirt on his boots. They said he wasn't the type for Oak Ridge. I stared at that photo for a long time. It wasn't just about control anymore. It was about erasing people. A letter came from Child Protective Services. It said Emily had been reported. Emotional instability. Neglectful environment. Emily couldn't breathe when she read it. She sank to the floor, holding our daughter tight like she might be taken that instant. Marlene was doing this. She wanted to break her. Not just with notices, with fear. I called every number I could. Nobody answered. We had 72 hours before a case officer arrived. 3 days. To prove my wife wasn't a danger. To prove we were allowed to keep our child. It didn't feel like a violation anymore. It felt like war. He lived 3 houses down. Rarely left his garage. Always wore headphones. Name was Echo. Tech guy from what Fred told me. I knocked. He cracked the door. "You're the Navy guy," he said. I nodded. "I need help. Accessing HOA records, security footage, anything." He shook his head. "Nope. Been there. Helped someone once. Got my house marked. They poisoned my dog." The door creaked shut. Before it closed fully, he added, "Go to war with Marlene, you'd better bring a body bag." Then it clicked. I wasn't the first one who fought back. I was just the last one still standing. I stayed up all night reviewing Fred's notes. Violations weren't random. They followed a pattern. Single mothers, veterans, elderly, minorities, anyone unfit for the HOA's version of normal. Emily brought me coffee in the morning. She looked like she hadn't slept. She didn't ask what I was doing, just sat down beside me. Silently. I opened a folder marked Levens, 2017. Inside, letters, fines, eviction notice. That family never returned, and just like us, they planted lavender. A new envelope appeared taped to our door. Notice of trespass. It barred me from speaking at the next HOA meeting. Cited hostile demeanor. We were being boxed in. Emily found her journal torn and soaked in the backyard. We never left it outside. The fear in her eyes said everything. She didn't feel safe here, not in this house, not even in her own skin. I called Fred. He said nothing. Just told me to come over. When I did, he handed me a flash drive. No name, no backup. If they know you have it. He didn't finish that sentence. He didn't need to. 1 to 14 a.m. Our front camera picked up movement. A figure stepped onto our lawn. No mask, just a clipboard and gloves. He moved slow, calculated, tried our door handle, walked to the side window. Emily was frozen with the baby in her arms. I reached for the baseball bat, unlocked the door, but the figure was already gone. The next morning, the same man filed a violation, unsecured perimeter, improper outdoor lighting. No signature, just the HOA seal. They weren't hiding anymore. They wanted us to know. The third time he came back, I was waiting. I hid behind the hedge. When he moved to check the window, I stepped out. "Get off my property." He turned, smirked. "Marlene says this belongs to the HOA." I shoved him. He stumbled, dropped his clipboard. Then, flashing red and blue, someone had called the police. Not for him, for me. They tackled me, handcuffed me. Emily screamed from the porch, the baby crying in her arms. The man picked up his clipboard and walked away. I spent 9 hours in holding. No charges filed, just enough time to show me who had power and who didn't. When they let me go, they handed me a notice I was now officially banned from HOA grounds, including my own house. Emily was alone. Fred didn't answer. Echo was a ghost. It was raining when I walked the neighborhood perimeter. My wife was inside that house, and I couldn't touch the doorknob. For the first time in my life, I felt useless, not as a man, but as a father. The next morning, Echo opened his garage. He didn't say a word, just waved me in. 3 monitors glowed. Footage, files, access logs, HOA, payment trails. "I used to work in cyber intelligence," he said. "I know how to cover tracks. Marlene's not as clean as she thinks." I asked him why he changed his mind. He paused. "My sister. HOA drove her out. She died 2 months later. I didn't help then." He stared at the screen. "I'm helping now." I watched Emily through the living room window. She was rocking the baby, but her face was somewhere else, lost. I tapped the glass. She looked up, smiled, weak but real. She walked to the window, held up the baby, pressed her forehead against the pane. I did the same. 2 inches of glass. That's all that separated us, and it felt like a canyon. That's when I knew. They weren't trying to scare us, they were trying to separate us, because separated people don't fight back. Emily stepped into the HOA office alone. I watched from across the street. She was calm, measured. She handed over a single document, a clause in the HOA charter, buried deep, stating any excessive punitive action without written board approval was unlawful. Marlene blinked, flinched. Emily walked out, head held high. That night she placed the lavender back in the front yard. No words, just action, and, for the first time, Marlene didn't remove it. Echo posted a video, 30 minutes of raw data, fines, threats, secret payments, audio of Marlene mocking residents. Within hours, it spread. Comments poured in, my parents were pushed out. They took my deposit. They destroyed my garden. Fred opened his blinds for the first time in years. Someone placed a sunflower on our lawn. Then another, and another. Oak Ridge was still quiet, but something under it had shifted. The emergency HOA meeting was set. Closed session, no press, no guests, only Marlene the board and authorized voices. Emily walked in. So did Fred. So did Echo. And then, me. I wore the old uniform, didn't say a word. Marlene turned pale. Fred stood up. I have something to show. He pulled out a projector, plugged in the drive. A video began to play, and in that room, nobody breathed. The video showed Fred's son, day after eviction, standing outside his house clutching a letter, tears on his face. Then, the screen went dark. A date flashed the day he died. Gasps, whispers. A board member started crying. Emily stepped forward. You break people, piece by piece, until they're quiet. She looked directly at Marlene. You didn't just hurt us, you erased them. Marlene said nothing, but her hands began to shake, and we weren't finished. The screen showed a boy sitting on a porch. He held an envelope. His hands were shaking. You could see it clearly, the red HOA seal on the top. Then he stood, walked down the steps, out of frame. Silence. Then a timestamp. The date. Fred's son took his life. No music, no narration. Just the hum of a projector and the sound of someone crying in the back row. Fred sat down slowly. Didn't say a word. Echo looked away. I looked at Marlene. And for the first time since this began, she blinked. Emily stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake. You reported me as unfit. You called me dangerous. But you weaponized silence. She pulled out a letter. It was the HOA code, highlighted, annotated, crossed out. Your authority was never legal, just loud. She turned to the room. How many of you stayed quiet because you were tired, because you were scared? No one answered, but no one looked away either. I nearly lost my baby, because of a flower, because of you, and for the first time since moving in, Emily wasn't the one afraid. Someone knocked on the meeting room door, twice. 2 agents stepped in, FBI badges, suits, calm voices. Marlene Whitmore. You're under investigation for fraud, harassment, conspiracy to intimidate, and unlawful surveillance. Gasps. She stood up shaky, tried to speak. Nothing came out. They walked her out in silence. Fred stood. Echo stood. So did everyone else. It wasn't loud. No cheering, no yelling. Just the sound of chairs being pushed back and the quiet satisfaction of something finally breaking. Justice. When it comes slow, hits harder. Outside, it started to rain. Fred handed me a folded photo of his son. I never thought I'd see someone win. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Echo laughed under his breath. Guess HOA doesn't stand for hell on Americans anymore. Emily walked toward me. She had our daughter in her arms, their faces calm, unbothered, free. I took her hand. We stood still. No fences, no fines, no eyes behind tinted glass, just rain and peace. The next morning we replanted the lavender. Same spot, same color. No one came to stop us. Emily didn't say anything. She just pressed her fingers into the soil, gentle and slow. I held our daughter watching her coo in the sunlight. This wasn't about a flower. It never was. It was about the right to exist, to raise a child, to sleep without fear, to live with color in a place that tried to strip it all away. The lavender stayed, so did we. A month later, Oak Ridge felt different. Lawns weren't perfect, gardens weren't identical, but people smiled again. Fred was elected to the new HOA board. Echo joined him. Emily, too. I stayed out of it. That wasn't my role anymore. Someone brought over cookies. Someone else asked to borrow a wrench. No one left anonymous letters. No one filed fines. We didn't erase what happened. But we stopped pretending it didn't. That's how neighborhoods heal, not with silence, but with choice. I wrote a letter to the Veterans Network, to Fred's old church, to the parents who left and the ones who stayed quiet. I told them what happened, how a place built for peace became a cage, and how it broke, not from force, but from truth. I wrote, "You were never the problem. You were just outnumbered." Sometimes the system doesn't fall with a crash. Sometimes it unravels slowly, petal by petal, fence by fence, until what's left is just space and the people who dare to fill it. Kids played in the street now, barefoot, loud, unapologetic. Fred put up a small American flag. Echo painted his garage door bright green, and one by one sunflowers started to appear, on lawns, on windowsills, in flower beds. No one asked who started it. We didn't need to. Emily sat on the porch feeding our daughter. I sat beside her watching the street breathe again. No sirens, no silence, just the wind through the lavender. Some battles don't end with victory. They end with belonging. If any part of this story felt familiar, if you've ever been silenced, cornered, or made small, this isn't just my story, it's yours too. The names may be different. The fences may be taller, but the fight feels the same. So, comment "I've been there." If you have, if you're still there, if you just broke free, and share this not for the views, but for the neighbors still afraid to speak. Sometimes justice doesn't look like sirens. Sometimes it looks like a flower that stayed in the ground and refused to be pulled.